All right, welcome everyone. I see we have people coming in to our webinar today.
Oh,
Whoops. To panelists and attendees. That's what I'm trying to do.
And good afternoon, everyone. As you're coming in, please go ahead and tell us where you're coming in from, what part of Nigeria you're coming from. You'll see the chat button down at the bottom on the webinar, so you can go ahead and type in that chat and tell us where you're coming in from. Oh, here's Grant coming in from South Africa. Good to see you, Grant. Benjamin. Oliver from Kitwe, Zambia. We are planning on quite a crowd today. We have around 500 people registered for the webinar today, so it is going to be busy, and we're going to let people come in here. We're about 2 minutes past the hour, so we're going to give a few minutes for people to come in, and then we'll get started. Hello, Bio from Abuja. We were just talking about Abuja and Ngozi and I. Port Harcourt, good to see you, Sunday. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, just go ahead into the chat at the bottom of the Zoom screen and go ahead and tell us where you're coming in from. We love seeing where everyone is coming to hear about these ideas.
Ottawa. Wow, Abuja. Washington, D.C., Nigeria. Lagos.
Lagos.
we have Ohio.
Ohio coming in as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Portsmouth, Ohio, yeah.
That's just down the road for me. I'm in Cleveland, Josh.
All right, we still have people coming in, and if you're just arriving now, please in the chat, just go ahead and let us know where you're coming in from. We're going to get started in just a minute. Hello, Nigerian American Chamber of Commerce. Thanks so much for your help in putting this together.
Yeah.
Hi, Fun Malayo. Good to see you. Good day. I'm sure it's a nice afternoon there in Nigeria. It's early morning here in the United States on the East Coast of the US. And it's winter, so we've got some pretty cold weather around. Anthony calling in from Lagos, good to see you. Craig from South Africa as well. So we have representation from across Africa, it looks like.
Yeah.
Precious in Lagos. Henry Uche from the Daily Sun, thank you for joining us, Henry. Dr. Michael Oyanuga from Abuja, good to see you. All right, so we're at 8:05 here on the East Coast. Ngozi, if you'd maybe like to get us started, and you can decide if we'd like to wait another few minutes. We do have people joining regularly, so I'll let you take it from here and decide whenever we get going.
Maybe we give them 3 more minutes. What do you think?
Okay, that works for me. So about 3 more minutes.
Yeah.
And for everyone who's already on, we'll get started in about 3 minutes. Gabriel, good to see you from Enugu, Nigeria. Gloria Nwafor, a business reporter from The Guardian. Thank you for being with us. We're excited for this opportunity to to talk about these programs. And hello, I think that's Aikan Ogunjobi. Nice to see you. Thank you. Funke Bolojoko from Rushim, Nigeria, producers of 100% natural herbal teas, master tea brand. All right, great. I have to look for that. We're expecting a wide cross section of people from across Nigeria, from education, from business. Michael Ani from Business Day Media in Nigeria, thanks so much for joining us. Chakodi from The Nation newspaper. Oluchi, a business reporter from This Day newspapers. Great representation of the press. Ahoren from Benue State in Nigeria. All right, probably about 1 more minute, Ngozi, from my calculations. I hate to do math in public, but that would have been about 3 minutes from when we decided to get going. I will point out for everyone who's on the webinar, we will follow up afterwards with a recording of the presentation. So if you missed part of it or you'd like to look back over the presentation, you'll have that access to that recording. And it's also will be free for you to pass around to anyone else that you think would be valuable for. So. Okay, let's see, we are at 8:08 here in the morning on the East Coast. So Ngozi, if you'd like to get us started.
Do you think we can start, or 2 minutes to hit 50?
That's fine if you, want to wait. I know you were saying that folks are going to have some time getting in. So hello, Tayo. Good to see you. Olusegun, good afternoon to you.
Welcome, Obasemo from food processing.
And one thing we'll point out is during the presentation, feel free to insert your questions into the chat. And if we can answer via text, we'll do that, either Ngozi or I. And if not, we'll hold those questions for the end and then get some verbal response from the panelists. So as the presentation begins, feel free to ask those questions in the chat. And as I mentioned, we have nearly 500 registered, so we're trying to allow folks to come in.
Welcome, Dr. Chidi Ulelu.
Good to see you. From Lagos.
Welcome, Dapo Kasimu from Lagos.
All right, and Ngozi, we're over 50 at this point, and I'll keep tabs on that and be able to make sure that folks are getting what they need as they come in. If you'd like to go ahead and get started.
Okay. Thank you, Rob, for passing the. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, I think so. We're having people say yes.
Oh, good. Greetings to Federal Republic of Nigeria and greetings to all government officials, all protocol observed. Greetings to the Director General of Nigerian American Chamber of Commerce. Greetings to the United States Consulate General in Nigeria. And greetings to all panelists of this webinar and the media representatives. You all are welcome. I am Mrs. Ngozi Ogoke, a veteran oil and gas professional, industrial chemist, and an entrepreneur, a certified global entrepreneur professor by International Council of Small Business, USA, a member of USASB, a certified master trainer of Entrepreneurial Learning Institute Initiative Program with the acronym ELI, and the president of the Institute of Entrepreneurial Excellence, Innovation and Sustainability, IEEIS, and some other organizations. It is a great honor to introduce to you the president of Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative, ELI USA, President Rob Hendon. He has degrees in astronautical engineering and systems management and has flown into Abuja some time ago. President Rob Hendon has spent over 8 years in education at the university, community college, and high school levels, as well as 21 years as a United States Air Force officer. In his diverse role as an engineer, pilot, commander, faculty member, and associate dean, Rob positively impacted hundreds of colleagues and students that he has enjoyed interacting with over the years. Rob is also currently serving as the president of Lemonade's Friends, a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting cancer patients in need. And finally, it is my great privilege, and I'm proud to introduce to you Mr. Gary Schneider, the founder of Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative, ELI, United States. He is an author and entrepreneur. Mr. Schneider is an internationally recognized thought leader in the field of entrepreneurial mindset education. His message has influenced a broad audience from academic institutions and economic development organizations to government and nonprofit organizations worldwide, including the Erwin Marion Kaufman Foundation, the Cisco Entrepreneur Institute, the Columbia Ministry of Education, the United States Department, and the European Commission. As the founder and the CEO of the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative, Gary led the development of the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program, which has been recognized by the Kaufman Foundation as redefining entrepreneurship education in classrooms and communities around the world. The Ice House program has been featured at the United Nations General Assembly, the Papal Council for Peace and Justice at the Vatican City in Italy, and the European Commission in Brussels. Schneider, along with Pulitzer nominee Clifton Talbot, is also the co-author of Who Owns the Ice House, which consists of 8 life lessons from an unlikely entrepreneur. Who Owns the Ice House is an international bestseller described as required reading for humanity. With his focus on the entrepreneurial mindset, Gary has presented numerous keynotes, workshops, and training programs throughout the United States and overseas. Recent engagements include the Global Entrepreneurship Congress in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil and Moscow, as well as speaking and training programs in Cape Town, Athens, London, Bogota, Buenos Aires, Mexico City, Sofia, Santiago, Aberdeen, Nicosia, Zagreb, Tbilisi, and Baku. Gary also served as a board member for the Hershey Montessori School, a member of the Dean Councils at the Purdue Polytechnic Institute, and an advisory council member for Technological Monterrey Tech 21 model to produce graduates in Mexico with an entrepreneurial spirit and humanistic outlook for the 21st century. Fellow citizens, the world has changed in ways that now require everyone to think like an entrepreneur. As global markets expand, the emergence of African intra-trade initiative, and people look for unseen opportunities, an entrepreneurial mindset is the most fundamental tool for adapting and transforming our lives and economies. It is this drive that led to my participation in the Master Certificate program offered at ELI. During the program, I learned how an entrepreneurial mindset empowers and engages government, corporate workers, students, teachers, and business, and why it is something all of us need to embrace, especially in this post-pandemic stage we are in. Specifically, I also learned how the shift in mindset can transform ordinary person to become extraordinary, which can have positive economic growth in Nigerian economic ecosystems and Africa as a whole, as it has been done in other countries that have adopted the message that is being taught by the ELI initiative program. Mr. Schneider, the floor is yours. You are welcome to Nigeria.
Thank you, Ngozi, and thank you, Rob, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm very, very honored and excited to share with you all some of what we've learned about the entrepreneurial mindset, how to cultivate this in ourselves and others. And I'll get right into it here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I want to make sure that you all can see my screen here. Is that showing up there?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, I got to just move this out of the way. Okay. You can see the slides okay there, Rob?
We sure can.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to talk about the entrepreneurial mindset and how we can use this to transform Nigeria's economic ecosystem. So I'm going to talk about the entrepreneurial mindset, the curriculum we've developed. Rob will jump in at the end and show us a little bit about how it works. And then I would like to engage with you all in a conversation at the end to talk about how we can use these ideas to transform Nigeria's economic ecosystem. So if you all are up for that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I want to start with the questions that I've been trying to answer for about 30 years. I've been obsessed with this question of how do people who have no advantage in life, they don't have advanced university degrees, they're not particularly brilliant, they don't have access to money or rich relatives, how do people who have nothing create something? How do they rise above their circumstances to create both meaning and prosperity in their lives? This is a question I've been trying to answer for nearly 30 years, and we've developed a curriculum around this, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But I've asked myself, how does somebody like Frank Magwegwe from South Africa go from being a homeless street vendor to becoming the CEO of one of South Africa's most successful financial institutions? How does Paul Nyambe, a poor farmer in Zambia, take $200, his last $200, and create a goat processing company that's empowered hundreds of farmers across Zambia? How does Abdullahi Mohammed, a young Nigerian boy with no internet access, with no money, create a digital marketing company with customers all over the world? How does that happen? How do people who have nothing create something? And as I said, we've developed a curriculum as a result of this research, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the curriculum in a moment. But first, I want to kind of get into some of the background and the research and the theory, some of what we've learned. Now, as Ngozi said, the world has changed in ways that now require everyone to think like an entrepreneur. And I don't mean that everyone should necessarily start a business, right? We need entrepreneurial thinkers at all levels of society, in public sector, in private sector, in the nonprofit sector. We need people to think like entrepreneurs. The other point that I want to make is that the mindset that once enabled us to thrive is becoming obsolete. It's now becoming, the mindset that once enabled us to thrive is rapidly becoming maladaptive to the new world. And I'll talk a little bit about how that is. So when we look at the entrepreneur or the entrepreneurial person, what we see is someone who is creative, someone who is a critical thinker, who can identify and solve problems when the path is not clear, when the rules are not well defined, right? They know how to mobilize resources and make things happen when there's no one there to tell them what to do, right? And you know, the point here is that there's unlimited global demand for people who can think like entrepreneurs, right? And you know, I suppose what this brings forward is that, you know, we've all been trained to think like employees, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means in a moment. But I also want to bring forth the benefits of entrepreneurial thinking at a societal level, right? We understand that entrepreneurial thinking can not only empower the individual to adapt and thrive in a rapidly changing world, but the entrepreneurial mindset also prepares them to make a greater contribution to the organizations, the institutions, the academies, the societies they inhabit. And as you know, the world is waking up to the idea that entrepreneurial activity is essential for creating vibrant, equitable, and sustainable communities. We need more entrepreneurs. At Eli, we're not the only ones who are saying this. Big thinkers around the world, like the World Economic Forum, are saying things that, like, excuse me, for example, that entrepreneurship education is essential for developing the human capital necessary for building the societies of the future. There's a paper published by the OECD in 2015 entitled Entrepreneurship in Education, in which they identified the benefits of entrepreneurship education as increased societal resilience, individual growth, increased academic engagement, and improved equality. So another, excuse me, another statement from the World Economic Forum caught my attention, in which they said, it's not enough to add entrepreneurship on the perimeter, that it needs to be at the core of the way education operates. Now that comment really struck me because, it resonates, because it's not enough to just have an entrepreneurship class that teaches people how to start and run a business, right? We need to broaden our understanding of entrepreneurship. And so we all understand this, the need to, you know, the importance and the role that education plays in cultivating entrepreneurial attitudes and skills. The problem is that for as popular as entrepreneurship has become, we still don't really understand it very well. And as a result, our systems of education have not been able to keep pace. One of the challenges, I think one of the greatest challenges, is that we tend to think of entrepreneurship in binary terms. You either are going to be an entrepreneur, start a business, or you're going to be an employee. And that's really where the challenge lies. We have to think about entrepreneurship more broadly than just someone who's going to start a business. Our ability to embrace entrepreneurial thinking is limited by the ways in which we define it. And historically, you know, we sort of default to what in the 19th century they referred to as the great man theory of entrepreneurship. That there are exceptional people that seem to have been born with these exceptional traits, and they somehow become innovative and entrepreneurial, right? And the rest of us are just left to become employees for these so-called great men. And in our research, we've bore out a theory that's very, very different from this, that shows the extraordinary ability of ordinary people. The problem is that by thinking of entrepreneurship as a trait-based phenomenon, we not only overlook the humble, improvised origins of even some of the world's largest companies, but we also overlook the untapped potential in ordinary people. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. So back in 2009, I did a research project for the Cisco Entrepreneur Institute. And we were asked to do a gap analysis on the entrepreneurship education ecosystem in the United States. And what we found is that the way entrepreneurship is typically characterized in a classroom is very different from what a typical entrepreneur is actually doing. And as part of this research, I found a study that was done by a man named Amir Bideh, who was on leave from Harvard when he published his findings. he was looking at large established companies, but he found that these large established companies have what he called humble, improvised origins. They're not founded on any breakthrough technology. The entrepreneurs aren't spending much time writing business plans, nor are they doing much in-depth market research. They don't have much money, right? What Bidet found in his study, that companies like Hewlett-Packard, Microsoft, Walmart, large companies, Calvin Klein, they're founded with about $10,000. It's cobbled together from friends and family, right? And most importantly, he found that the founders of these companies had little or no experience in their chosen field. So when we looked at this profile, we ask ourselves, how is this possible? How does somebody take an ordinary idea? They don't have any big ideas. They don't have much planning, not much research, not much money, and not much experience. How do they make that into something? Now, when we look at this data, it makes perfect sense that they're born with some sort of mystical ability that enables them to do this. But when we dig beneath the surface and we look at the controllable factors within the person and the situation, a very different picture begins to emerge. So I'm going to walk you through this concept called transformation theory very briefly. Transformation theory was adapted by a man named Dr. George Land as a framework for understanding the nature of change. And this is really a bedrock concept in understanding our curriculum and our programs and our approach to cultivating entrepreneurship. So it works like this. In Dr. Land's theory, there are three phases of change. There's a discovery phase, there's a growth phase, and then there's an obsolescence phase, or in some cases, a reinvention phase. Now, what Dr. Land is saying is that each of these three phases requires separate rules for survival. And these little orange dots represent the moment in time when the rules for survival change. The important thing that Dr. Land points out, the rules for survival in phase one do not apply to phase two, and the rules for survival in phase two do not apply to phase three, and so forth, right? So the definition of maladaptive is the inability to recognize that the circumstances have changed and new rules are required. So let's look at this from a human perspective, right? We all live by exchanging. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to break entrepreneurship down into its first principles, into its most basic concept. And so we all live by exchanging something useful with someone else. That's how we live in a modern society, right? And so this begs the question, what is it that we exchange? What is the useful thing that we exchange? With whom do we exchange it? And how do we learn how to become useful? Those are some questions, some rhetorical questions that I'd like to put forth. So most of us, we learn how to become useful, right? We go to school, we learn how to become useful. And this first orange dot means we've graduated from school and we now go out into the workforce and we replicate what we learned and we become more and more useful. We grow and advance in our career. We advance in our career, we grow in the organization, climb the corporate ladder, whatever the case may be. And then we hit the second break point when the growth starts to slow. And at that point, we either fade into obsolescence, maybe we retire, or in some cases, we're forced to reinvent ourselves. That's the basic outline here. But let's dig a little bit deeper here and recognize the circumstances, right? Most of us learn how to become useful within formal learning systems, within highly stable, routinized, other-directed, rule-bound learning environments that were designed to help us learn how to function and work in highly stable, routinized, other-directed, rule-bound working environments, right? And then the problems arise when the growth starts to slow and what we've been doing isn't working. And that's where we get stuck. And we tend to double down on our prior systems rather than reinventing ourselves. So the question I want to ask you is, how do we become useful to each other when the path is not clear and the rules are not well defined? How do we learn how to make ourselves useful to other humans outside of known systems? This is really a way to think about the opportunity, the entrepreneurial opportunity discovery process, right? So the contextual factors are very important here. There's lots of ambiguity, right? We don't know. There's no known system. There's no known curriculum. There's no known path. We have to go out into the world and figure out how to make ourselves useful to other humans. And there's very limited resources. Now, these are two very important contextual factors that help cultivate entrepreneurial attitudes, behaviors, and skills, right? Lots of ambiguity and uncertainty and very limited resources. Those are not incidental factors. They're essential factors, right? You need the ambiguity and the resource constraints to develop the entrepreneurial mindset. So how does one figure out how to make oneself useful in this highly ambiguous, resource-constrained circumstances? What are the rules for survival in such conditions? That's what I'll talk about very briefly, right? It begins with problem-finding skills. And the major cognitive shift here is we recognize that we need to solve problems for other people. And so the cognitive shift that begins to expose opportunity is away from one's own needs and an empathic perspective of the needs of others, right? This is empathy, curiosity, observation, and inquiry. Then we need problem-solving skills. We need to learn how to think creatively. We need to learn how to think critically. We need to learn how to design and conduct micro experiments. We need to learn how to adapt, how to collaborate, how to work in teams, how to network and communicate, and how to be resourceful, how to use what we have to start where we are, use what we have, and build from there. And lastly, the rules for survival here are self-direction and self-regulation. We need an internal locus of control, which is a deeply held belief. This goes to mindset, a deeply held belief that I am in charge of my future, as opposed to someone who has an external locus of control, has a deeply held belief that fate or luck or powerful others are somehow controlling their lives. We need to learn how to tolerate ambiguity. We need to become self-directed lifelong learners. We need to become self-aware, to learn how to think about our own thinking. And we need to develop resilience. That's the ability to get back up after you get knocked down. So for those of you who are in education and leaders, you recognize that entrepreneurial skills are 21st century skills. Right? These are the skills thought leaders around the world, including the World Economic Forum, have determined are the skills all students will need in order to adapt and thrive in the 21st century. They don't always call them entrepreneurial skills. Sometimes they call them soft skills. Sometimes they call them 21st century skills. But these, in some form or another, these are basically the skills that all students will need to adapt and thrive and to make a greater contribution to their communities. So what I've learned from this is a simple definition of entrepreneurship as the self-directed pursuit of opportunities to create value for others. That's a simple definition. Anyone can embrace this definition, whether they work within an established company, a government organization, academic institution, or they want to go out and start a business of their own. Anyone can embrace this. Why? Why would you want to embrace this? Because by creating value for others, we empower ourselves. The more useful we become, the better off we're likely to be. Right? That is, to me, the perfect definition of entrepreneurship. There's a two-part definition here. We create value for others. By doing so, we empower ourselves. And what this hints at is the motivation to become innovative and entrepreneurial, right? So when we look at the research in human motivation, what we know is that when a human is encouraged to pursue his or her own interests and cultivate his or her abilities in ways that contribute to the greater good, in that intersection of those three things, we become optimally engaged. When we're able to pursue our own interests and develop our abilities in ways that contribute to the greater good, we are able to tap into the most potent form of human motivation that we know. And so what I'm saying here is that the successful entrepreneur is nothing more than an ordinary person with a compelling goal. It has very little to do with their traits, and it has everything to do with their circumstances and their individual interpretation of their circumstance. So the entrepreneurial mindset begins with this basic underlying assumption that it's my responsibility to figure out how to make myself useful to others. And by doing so, I can empower myself. Now, that brings out the employee mindset. Is a deeply held, mostly unconscious belief that someone else is going to teach me how to become useful. Someone else is going to teach me what is useful, and I will do that. It's an other directed. So the basic difference here, the shift we have to make as individuals and organizations, as a society, the shift we have to make is from other directed value creation to self-directed value creation. And by making that shift, we'll tap into this vast reservoir of untapped human potential. So I was doing the Cisco project and I was interviewing entrepreneurs. I want to talk a little bit now about the Ice House program and where this name comes from. I was interviewing entrepreneurs across the United States, not the big name, very successful entrepreneurs, but the everyday entrepreneurs, the people who started with nothing. And I met my co-author, Clifton Talbert, who was a very successful entrepreneur. And I asked him, how did you learn how to think like an entrepreneur? And he showed me this old black and white photograph of his uncle. And Clifton explained to me that he was born in the Mississippi Delta in the southern United States in the 1940s. He was born in a very poor cotton community to a teenage mother. He didn't know a father. and his work was in the cotton field since he was a little boy. And when he was 13 years old, he was invited to work along his Uncle Cleve. And that's the picture of Uncle Cleve. And Uncle Cleve owned the local ice house. He had a 4th or a 5th grade education. He could read and write and do basic arithmetic. He was the only man in his town that had money in the bank, right? And so that's where the inspiration came from the book, Who Owns the Ice House? As Ngozi mentioned, it's become an international bestseller, recognized as required reading for humanity. It uses the story of Clifton and his Uncle Cleve, the inspiration, to talk about 8 life lessons that we distilled from hundreds of interviews with unlikely entrepreneurs. And with some funding from the Kauffman Foundation, we created this curriculum. It's gone all over the world. I'll tell you a little bit about how that works now, and then Rob will show some of the features of the program in a minute. But it's really a straightforward program, and it's designed to expose a broad range of students to the fundamental concepts of entrepreneurial thinking while immersing them in entrepreneurial project-based learning experiences that help them to cultivate the entrepreneurial attitudes, behaviors, and skills. Works very straightforward. Expose them to the 8 fundamental concepts, which I'll talk about in a moment. Engage them in the process. Inspire them with real-world examples. What we've done is we've taken some video clips from our interviews and inserted it right into the curriculum, so the students can learn right from the entrepreneurial people themselves. We focus on the mindset. What are the underlying beliefs and assumptions that are driving this behavior, right? We want the student to understand the mindset is a belief system. And it's a belief system that is perfectly designed to create the outcomes it's creating. Right? So the main focus is mindset. What are the beliefs and assumptions that are driving the behavior? We designed the course to encourage the students to identify and connect with local entrepreneurial people, invite them into the learning process as a way to reinforce the behavior. And lastly, as part of our research from the Cisco project, we realized that we needed to create a program that did not require the teacher to be a subject matter expert in entrepreneurship, because we couldn't scale that. The Ice House program does not require our teacher to be all they need to do, they need to complete a 3-day training program, as Ngozi has, but you don't need to be an expert in entrepreneurship. You need to learn how to facilitate learning. That's all you really need to know how to do. So very briefly here, these 8 core concepts we heard from entrepreneurs, right? The foundation is the power to choose. They don't allow themselves, their circumstances to dictate their lives. They choose the life they want, right? When you interview an entrepreneur, they very quickly start talking about a vision. There's a forward positive orientation in the mind, which is the foundation of tapping into human potential. They see problems as opportunities, right? Where most of us try to avoid problems, the entrepreneurs approach problems. They see them as potential opportunities. They're action-oriented. They learn to design and conduct micro experiments. They try lots of things until they get it right. They're constantly learning. They're not necessarily learning in classrooms. They're learning from friends. They're learning from their experiences. They're learning from experiments. They're learning online. They're learning from YouTube videos or audio books, but they're constantly learning. And when I tell my own grown children, it really comes down to 3 things. You got to be looking for problems to solve. You got to be trying lots of things, and you always have to be learning. As a result, you'll learn how to create wealth. You'll learn how to establish a reputation for being reliable. You'll learn how to connect with a community of support and build an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And you'll learn about the power of persistence, right? And where that comes from is the hope and the optimism in our own self-dialogue. So there are 4 versions now of the Ice House program since we launched in 2010. We have the original edition. There's a student success version that's designed for high school students, early college, to help students learn how to succeed in school and in life with an entrepreneurial mindset. There's a small business edition. And most recently, we've developed what we call the middle school edition, which is for younger teenagers, maybe a 12 to 15-year-old in grades 6, 7, and 8, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe. So there's 4 different editions of the Ice House program. As Ngozi said, since we launched, we've been recognized by the United Nations, by a Papal Council for Peace and Justice at the Vatican, by the European Commission. Tom Rue, who is now the former Vice President of Entrepreneurship at the Kauffman Foundation, is the man who said the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program is redefining entrepreneurship in classrooms and communities worldwide. We have trained nearly 3,000 facilitators all over the world in the last 10 years. You'll notice that we have 1 trained facilitator in Nigeria, and her name is Ngozi Ogoke. She's our host for this webinar today. So that's just a quick overview of the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program. I'm going to turn it back over to our president, Rob Herndon, who will give you a little bit of a demo of what the program looks like, and then we'll get back and get to the questions. If you're thinking of questions to ask, please enter them in the chat function or in the Q&A function, and we'll get to those in just a minute. Rob, it's all yours. I'm going to stop sharing. Or yeah.
Yeah, you can stop sharing. Okay. Thanks so much, Gary, and thanks, Ngozi, for all your work to make this happen today. It's an honor to be with all of you and be talking about these ideas. As Gary mentioned, please go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A, and as soon as I get done here with my short presentation, we'll go ahead and start responding to those questions. So I just have a few slides to describe some concepts to take us from where Gary has taken us, describing the entrepreneurial mindset, and now giving you some insight into the Ice House entrepreneurship programs, a little bit of what they look like. I'll play some short clips, less than a minute each time, just so you can get a feel for what exactly the program entails. All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we'll make sure that that is working just fine. There we go. All right, there we go. You should be able to see my slides from here. So I just want to reconnect to what Gary was describing. So we have the 4 different programs, our original edition, the Student Success Program, a small business version, and the middle school edition. And the way that these programs are designed is for the original edition and the small business edition to be very similar. So you're going to see when I show these programs how they're laid out in video format. So I'll explain those for you. Then the other 2 programs, the Student Success version and our middle school edition, have a digital textbook because these are usually used in classrooms or for students either in a sort of secondary situation or a post-secondary situation. And that's how these are designed. They have that digital textbook along with supplemental video to go along with it. So I'll show you those here in a second. All of our programs align with the core components that Gary was just giving a description of. So those 8 life lessons form the core of the content for the program. It's also critical in these programs that we don't just talk about these concepts, but that students are immersed into the entrepreneurial process. So I'll talk a little bit about how they're immersed into those programs. And then the third critical element of our programs is that the content and the experience that they're going through as practicing entrepreneurship is reinforced by video content of relatable examples of others who have come from similar or worse circumstances and been able to achieve their entrepreneurial goals. So I'm not going to rehash the 8 life lessons, but I just wanted to make the point, this is where the content of the program falls around, is those 8 life lessons. The experiential part of the program is done through what we call our Icehouse Opportunity Discovery Canvas and the process that goes through that. And for instance, our facilitators, as Gary mentioned, we have folks around the world from 27 different countries who are utilizing these programs. When you come to that training, you get to understand how to use this Opportunity Discovery Canvas. If you're familiar with the business model canvas that many business schools use, you'll recognize a similar process. It's very scientifically based. It's the concept of, we're first going to ask a lot of questions through inquiry, and we're going to observe our surroundings to really try and understand the problem that we're attempting to solve. Then we jump into experimenting with potential solutions, adapting our new, based on the information that we receive. We then start to develop solutions. Then we finally move, once we feel like we have a good solution for our problem, we move to connecting that with the broader world, where we then learn to advocate for that and then eventually get it implemented. So this very basic canvas forms the sort of structure for how students are led through the experiential portion of the programs. And when you go to facilitator training, you get further understanding and how that works. And then finally, the third piece of our programs that's critical is providing these relatable examples, other socially relatable models that people can connect to and say, you know what, if they can do something that they've described, I should be able to do that as well. So for instance, the folks I have here on the screen, Rodney Walker, I'm going to have a short clip from him that I'll display here in a second. He grew up in a very difficult neighborhood on the south side of Chicago with a lot of gang activity, a lot of murders going on around him, along with parents who were just not present. They had drug addiction problems. And so he therefore was suffering in school. And he talks about through his interviews that we have in the programs about how his exposure and his practice of these entrepreneurial behaviors allowed him to connect with his education so much to the point now where he's a college graduate and is actually now a graduate of Yale, one of the Ivy League schools here in the United States, and now at Harvard working on his doctorate at that level. So he talks about that transformation that was brought about through the entrepreneurial process for him. The second person there is Brian Scudamore. He founded what is now a multinational company here in North America called 1-800-GOT-JUNK, which is all they do is they go and they're able to take junk that people have sitting around in their homes or in their yards and take that and clear that out of their neighborhood and take it to where it can be disposed of. He started as a young man with a very small amount of money and an old beat up pickup truck, and has eventually turned that into a multi-million-dollar company. So he talks about his experiences. And then finally, I have an image here of a father and daughter, Ted and Serena Moore, who, Ted came from also a very difficult background, was not even able to graduate from high school here in the US. but how he learned on the job and then worked with his daughter, Serena, to develop a company that is now hiring, has 80 people on their payroll, and they're doing millions of dollars of business in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. And these are just a few examples of the types of folks that are shown in our Ice House Entrepreneurship programs. All right, I'm going to jump on over to let you see some of the clips from this. I'm going to get the sharing set up to be able to show you this. And we're going to share the sound. And here we go. All right, so this first clip that I have for you is going to show you some of the content from the program. So we're talking about these 3 different levels of the program. This is that first level with the content. So I'll just show you about a minute here of what this content looks like.
In this diagram, the area inside the larger circle represents the aspects of our lives that we cannot control. The weather, the economy, our favorite sports team, or our boss's behavior are all things we may be concerned about, yet they are things we cannot control. The smaller circle represents the aspects of our lives that we can control. How we spend our time, what we think about, and what we focus on are all things that are within our control. The problem is that when we focus our time and attention on things we cannot control, the area of our lives that we can control begins to atrophy, shrinking.
All right, that's just a short example there of the type of content that is within the program. I'm going to scroll to a different portion so that you can see an example of one of the Ice House entrepreneur interviews we were discussing. And these are embedded within the content. So we talk about the content, and then there's an example. In this case, this is going to be Rodney Walker discussing his experiences.
Becomes deeply ingrained. Here, Rodney describes the influences that shaped his life as a teenager growing up on the streets of Chicago.
People base choices and the decisions that they make based off of what they know and what they've been exposed to, which is why it's a recurring deficit for many minority students, African-American males such as myself, is that we make choices and we make decisions based off of all that we know, all that we've been taught, everything that we've been exposed to, everything that we've taught to be cool and congratulated for. So sometimes making the choice to stay in school and get your education may not seem like the popular thing to do at the time. It may not seem like the most efficient thing to do to get out of your situation. Maybe dropping out of school because people around you say, oh, it's not relevant to your life. You're not going to get anywhere with this. You'll be better off selling drugs or, becoming a rapper or a basketball player. Maybe those seem more logical at a time. But if you can separate yourself from those derivatives and understand the importance of better choices and the better opportunities out there with the choices that you can make, I think that's ultimately what matters.
All right, so just a few short examples there from our original program. And so our original program and our small business program follows this same model with the way the content is delivered. I'm going to jump over now to show you quickly within these programs. So once your students are watching this video content, the rest of the program is based around, there's plenty of student discussions that can happen here through our platform, multiple choice assessments. These application assignments are where they're working through their opportunity discovery canvas. And then a really critical portion of the program is that they're reflecting on their work as they go. So there's plenty of assignments and activities for the students to participate in to help them make sure that they're understanding the concepts as they move forward. I'm now going to jump over and just give you a quick description of the Ice House Student Success Program. And this is also very similar to our middle school program. So these are the programs that are generally used in our education spaces. So as I was describing previously, it's a combination of an electronic PDF. So in the text version we have here, you can scroll down and you're going to see locations where you can go and watch a video. I'll jump over and we'll watch that video from Gary's co-author, Clifton Talbert, here in a second. But I'm just giving you a quick description of what these ePDFs look like. In this case, rather than those chalk demonstrations like I was just describing, I am going to get rid of this. Hold on a second. All right. And in this case, it just shows the content from the course in a written format versus having it in a video type content. So here I'm going to go over and show you the next part of the program here. All right. So from here, we're going to go over and we're going to watch a short clip from Clifton Talbert.
Some days when I'm with my uncle, I can still see it now. Yeah, we all went to school as best we could, but he didn't have that opportunity to do that. But there was something inside of him, almost instinctive, that he wanted to know more. And by knowing more, it put him more in control of his own life. And I would see him read a newspaper 10 times until the paper would be almost fragile. He wanted to know what was going on. And books, that cab was filled with manuals. And how could it not impact me? That in order to get where you needed to go, you had to know something. And you had to know it all the time. And he never stopped looking for that extra piece of knowledge. He never stopped learning.
And that was actually from lesson 4. So making that connection of knowledge and the importance of knowledge as you move forward. All right. So as I mentioned, it was going to be a very quick demo. That just gives you a short insight into like the type of content within the actual curriculum of the program. One of the things that Gary described is that, you know, our work has been really centered around training people who aren't entrepreneurs to go out and teach others these concepts. So that professional development training that we've done, as we've done for Ngozi, we believe has a lot of impact around the world. And then those folks go on to use the curriculum as we have it laid out and explained there for you. All right. I see we have, I've seen a number of raised hands as we were going, and I also see a lot of comments in the Q&A and the chat. So I'm done with my portion of the presentation, Gary and Ngozi, and I'll take a minute to get caught up on the chat if y'all would like to go ahead and think through those answers.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Ngozi. I'm going to just this is the point where we have for questions, as Rob said. I'm happy to answer the questions. I'm going to let you do that, Rob, so I'm not.
That's fine. Yeah, please go
questions
ahead
and
and you can continue, and I'm going to jump in and start to answer some of these questions. I see Ngozi is answering a number of them about how to contact her to move forward with the program. So, okay, great.
Good. So just a couple of quick things before we wrap up here. If you want to learn more, if you want to engage with the Ice House, you can buy the book. It's on Amazon. You can buy it for Kindle. You can buy audiobook. I'm not sure if a hard copy is available in Nigeria, but there's 4 different versions: hardcover, softcover, Kindle, and Audible, all available at Amazon. Who Owns the Ice House is there. We've got fantastic ratings. If you want to take the Ice House program now, we've reduced, there's a self-paced program with a reduced price of $99. That's also on our website. If you want to really take a deeper dive into this and become familiar with the Ice House program, you can take the course yourself. If you want to learn how to become an ELI authorized facilitator, we have our next online facilitator trainings. The next one's coming up very briefly. There are a few seats left in our February training. If not February, there's also one in April. You can find all of that on our website. And as Rob said, you can learn more about our work at elimindset.com. If you want to learn how to bring this program to Nigeria, please visit IEEIS.com, and Ngozi will facilitate that. So I'm going to stop sharing there, Rob, and let's switch over to Q&A.
Okay, that's great. And I'm responding to a few that are coming through via text. One of the questions, and I just responded to Grant, he was asking about relatable models and whether we have examples from people around the world. And we, within the program, embedded within the program, there's not, for example, anyone directly from Nigeria or from South Africa, but the way the program is set up is that once you get trained as a facilitator, the expectation is that you go and supplement the content with those examples from your local community. Because as we try to be worldwide and get this out to the world, we can't necessarily, at least right now, get into every community around the world. So we're relying on those facilitators to take their phone, do an interview with a local entrepreneur, and then show that to their students in their classrooms, or physically bring those entrepreneurs into their classrooms. So it's meant to be localized by the facilitator, just using these broader examples to get across some key points that are in the program. Let me see what other questions we have out there. Okay, so Gohi has a question around what are the expected outcomes of the training? Gary, would you like to answer that one?
Sure. So the training is sort of a deep dive into these fundamental aspects of entrepreneurial thought and process. But what we look at in the training is the controllable factors within the person and the situation that either cultivate, that either encourage or inhibit the development of entrepreneurial attitudes, behaviors, and skills. So we'll do a deep dive in understanding how to cultivate an entrepreneurial mindset in yourself and others. It's a very robust course. As I said, we've trained nearly 3,000 facilitators around the world. The feedback we get most often is this has been a transformational experience. People describe it as a life-changing experience. So broadly speaking, the outcome of the training is you will learn how to develop an entrepreneurial mindset in yourself and others, whether those others be your children, your students, your workforce, people in your community. Doesn't really matter. That's the outcome of the training.
If I may take up the next question that was asked by Mr. Adeyemi, what is the impact of environment on entrepreneurship process? Mr. Adeyemi, as we all know, in Nigeria, for example, and every other African countries, we have lots of problems in our country, and those problems is what Mr. Gary have just mentioned to all of us, that those problems are the opportunity to solve. And if you also visit the ELI and www.IEEIS, which is the Entrepreneurial Excellence Institute and Innovation and Sustainability, if you visit the website, you will see how all the effects and the impact of various causes that are being outlined, how it will help each and every one of us to be able to become a better person and be able to identify those opportunities which we have seen it as a problem. For example, you will also see that the course is well structured, that you have the curriculum for from kindergarten to the high school level. You have the curriculum for the university students, you have curriculum for the corporate bodies, and you have curriculum for the government, economic development, and you also have the curriculums that are for the people who are released from the prisons, how they can transform their lives to be a better person, to be able to adopt that entrepreneurial mindset, discover the opportunities. Opportunities are the problem. Let's say, for example, in Nigeria, we have problem of we don't have constant electricity. We don't have constant internet network. We don't have some of the social, economic factors that can improve that can improve us. But we have those natural resources. We also need entrepreneurial mindset in agriculture, for example. It is right now that we will start allowing and developing and delivering the curriculum to our young children, who will be the future of tomorrow, who will be able to acquire to be the Dangote of tomorrow, who will be able to be other Nigerian experts living abroad who have used their talent in developed countries. We have such talents right there in Nigeria. They require to develop the entrepreneurial mindset that will be able to help us to prosper, to be able to understand that we have the natural resources, good weather, good environmental situation, but we can be like Clifton, Talbot, which Gary mentioned, to start with something that will be able to develop us to be extraordinary person. And all these are implanted, and all these are part of the curriculum if you be able to get yourself signed up into the system. Gary, you may add one more point, or Rob, into the question.
No, thank you for that, Ngozi. I actually went and grabbed a book off of my bookshelf a few minutes ago. I've always loved this book. It's called The Ecology of Commerce. And it talks about the environmental impacts of business and how business and those working to improve the environment need to work together to come up with solutions. And it's really prime for the entrepreneurial methodology to try and create ways to solve people's problems, but to do it in a sustainable way. So I just wanted to tag on to that question. We've got a few more that have come in, so I want to be able to respond to those. One from Ali, who's asking about how does this relate to people that work full-time and run a side business, because I am working on providing support to people in this area. And Gary, you can weigh in, but I guess I'll go first. That's honestly, Ali, like one of the things that we talk about in our training is that is probably one of the best ways for people to just start dipping their feet into entrepreneurship. We don't expect people to give up their jobs, what's putting, food on their family's table, and take a risk on developing their own business just from day one. So we talk about through our programs about the concept of what's called micro experimentation, where you just try things out on the side. When you have that extra time, when you're not at work, working on that entrepreneurial venture on the side. And actually many of the examples that we have in our program, they went about developing their businesses in that way, and because it's a great way to build their business without a lot of resources. They can practice with it on the side and use the money coming from their full-time employment to help them finance their business. Gary, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, but it's a really good, I guess all I would say, it's a very good question, and it provides the opportunity to talk about humble improvised origins. Like most of these entrepreneurs, they start in the margins. They're not the big, bold risk takers that jump off the cliff. They start in the margin. You start with whatever spare time, whatever spare money, whatever spare thought we have, and figure out how to make yourself more useful to more people. The shift, again, the cognitive shift is in the realization that it's up to me to figure out how to make myself useful to other humans. And so once we realize that, then we realize there's nothing stopping me from making myself more useful. And we could say, oh, I don't have any money. You don't need money. You don't need to drop out of school. You don't need to quit your job. You just need to shift your thinking about how to make yourself more useful. Start, as they say, think big, but start small and act fast.
If I may add to that, if you visit the website www.ieeis and be able to complete all the trainings, we have also organized for people that have completed the training and have also developed, we are able to develop a feasible opportunity that they have identified, but there is no financial facility to be able to support them. We will be able to provide you with the finance to run your project. So for any of you that completed this training and we're able to provide a feasible opportunity, a problem that you want to solve, we will be able to support you all the way through to make it a success.
Thank you, Ngozi.
We're having lots of questions come in, so I want to make sure we can address as many of these as possible. There's one I see in the chat from Michael, and I'm going to paraphrase it here, Michael, which is essentially how Gary discussed countries should have an entrepreneurial mindset. But in his case, he talks about low-income economies with a high number of people in poverty. There is generally a belief that the government needs to cater for the majority of the citizens. And an example that he gave of this is in Nigeria, the subsidizing of oil and electricities. And he's pointing out, these policies are generally not how entrepreneurs should behave, like relying on the government for those subsidies. However, when the government stops that, it gets people agitated, in the general citizenry. So I think he's getting to the question of how can we develop an entrepreneurial mindset and convince people that, they don't have to rely on the government to solve those problems for them, and, show them that it's not going to make their life worse by trying to develop this entrepreneurial mindset. Is there anything you can add to that, Gary?
I don't think so, Rob. It's just like you're talking about cultural change, which is slow.
Right.
And that's what we've got to do, is start cultivating the idea that people can, I want to say it like this. I've interviewed now 500 underdog entrepreneurs from all over the world. And folks like I've talked about, like Frank Mugwegwe and Paul Nyambe and so on and so forth. I've seen a side of humanity that most people haven't seen. And, what I've come away thinking is that we've underestimated the power of ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And so we've got to start somewhere. We can't just think of this as binary. Well, the government is thinking of solving this problem through socialism. We've got to start encouraging students in school to figure out how to think more innovatively and more entrepreneurially, and slowly over time, the change will occur. You have to understand something here, that human beings are just like every other organism, in that we have an innate desire to become all that we can become. We're all like acorns trying to become the mighty oak tree. We have to create the circumstances in the environment that encourage us to do so. So that's another way to think about it.
That's great. And I think that gets to some of the questions we're seeing about, how can the entrepreneurial mindset be used to transform Nigeria's economy? I think like the point you're making, Gary, is that cultural change takes time and that it usually goes with small steps. So, the people within Nigeria need to see that the results from some of these activities are bearing fruit. So for instance, if this initiative starts to take off and the work of IEEIS goes throughout Nigeria, it's now starting to be talked about in the schools. Now in the next generation, I mean, it might take 20, 30 years, but once that understanding gets in place where people are using this mindset and they're seeing some results, then that's where I think that cultural change can start to happen. And this goes to a question that Oluchi asked a minute ago. He's talking about the huge challenges faced by entrepreneurs in this part of the world. So he wanted to know what the percentage of the thousands of students who we've mentioned who have succeeded, how many of them are from Africa? And I would say that we haven't done an extensive amount of work in Africa. Most of ours has taken place in North America, Central America, and South America. But we do see people, like Gary mentioned, Paul Niambe, who are using ideas like this to bring value and starting with essentially nothing. I mean, he mentioned Frank Mugwegwe in South Africa, who after apartheid fell was homeless and living out of a train station, and how he was able to literally from starting to sell fruit on out of a cart in Johannesburg, just sell it with a little bit differently than everybody else was doing. He started combining vegetables and fruit in such a way that people could use it as a complete meal. Like, okay, I'm going to combine a number of vegetables together and you can use this as part of your meal for that evening, rather than people having to pay separately for different vegetables. He became the top salesperson of the carts within that area of Johannesburg. And that was just his first step along the way to eventually now being the vice president of a bank there in South Africa. So it's these small steps that add up over a lifetime that can make a difference. And I think Ngozi has spoken well about those concepts as well.
So Rob, I want to take that Oluchi's question and connect it with something that Chakode is asking here. Is like, how are you using these initiatives to affect Nigerian education sector, right, in graduates? Chakode, that's why we've partnered with Ngozi to bring the training. The first step is to train educators. That's the most impactful lever that we know of, is to train teachers how to inculcate, how to encourage these attitudes and skills in young people. So that's why we're partnering with Ngozi and IEEIS to bring this program to Nigeria. The 3,000 students that you mentioned in your comment earlier, we've trained 3,000 educators and organizational leaders. Tens of thousands of students around the world have been enrolled in the program. So I just want to make that clear. We've trained, I don't know, I'm going to say we've probably trained 100 people in South Africa at the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation, which is one of Africa's largest foundations to support entrepreneurship. We've trained about 100 of their leaders over the last 3 or 4 years. And one of the ideas that we're working on now is to create a Pan-African Ice House Entrepreneurship Facilitator Training. We'll be working with Ngozi to do that, to bring this program more broadly to Africa. So thank you for that question.
And I see another question from Eteredge Consulting. What are the prospects available after going through facilitator training? How that works is once you become a certified facilitator of the program, then you're able, as I was describing, to understand that opportunity discovery process and work with students with that, whether they be adult students or young students. And so the prospects that are available is I noticed that, coming from a consulting background, we have a number of folks, some of those almost 3,000 people that Gary's describing that have become facilitators of the program. They use this program in conjunction with their other programs that they may be offering in their consulting businesses or in their coaching businesses. So they're guiding people either in business or students through offering the courses. You can then use the curriculum. You get that at a rate that you can then go and sell the curriculum. So you essentially become a reseller of that curriculum and can charge more for your services in order to make that worthwhile for you as a consultant. So there's a good question from Aluche about how can African prospective entrepreneurs upscale their challenges in this COVID-19 era? Would either of you like to discuss the differences that now we're living with COVID-19 in these ideas?
Can you ask that question again, Rob? I'm sorry.
Yeah, essentially, what has COVID-19 done to this process, and how can people essentially take advantage of the challenges that they're seeing in this COVID-19 era?
Well, I think that COVID-19 forces us to adapt, right? As George Lance said, we either adapt and thrive, or we die. It's grow or die. And that's, I think COVID has just reminded us that we can't just keep doing what we've always been doing. The world is changing at an unprecedented rate, and we all need to learn how to adapt and thrive. And the entrepreneur learns over time to pay attention to what other humans need. And that's the fundamental difference. They don't have the expectation that someone else is going to tell them what is useful. Their minds are attuned to what is needed in the world. So when COVID-19 happens, their brains automatically start looking for the opportunities. Things have changed. Now we need to adapt. What are people going to need? And what can I do to help people and find what they need?
Thanks for that, Gary. And there's another one that has come in from Dio. It's a good question. Is entrepreneurship for everyone, or are there people that can't be entrepreneurs?
So that's my favorite question, Dio. Thank you. After 30 years of interviewing and studying entrepreneurs, I've come to believe that non-entrepreneurial behavior is learned. Right? That we're all born curious, creative, problem solvers with an innate desire to grow and to contribute and to learn. That's innate. Now, should everybody start a business? Probably not. But we're all capable of being innovative and entrepreneurial. So that's how I would answer that question. Thank you. It's a very good question.
Okay, I'm scrolling through the chat. I know we're a little bit over our time, but we did get started a few minutes late. Trying to see what other questions. Golzi, has there been anything that you'd like to speak to?
Yes,
I want to answer
there is. Gary, go ahead.
There's a question from Okechukwu.
Oh, yes.
My question is, how can an entrepreneur get a loan from both government and private to start a business in this time of pandemic era? I have a slightly different perspective on this question. I don't think that you need money to start a business. I mean, let me back up. You don't need money to figure out how to make yourself useful to other humans. Maybe you need a very small amount of money. But to open a business, yes, you need money. So we're talking about two different things here. Are you talking about opening a business, or are you talking about finding new ways to make yourself useful to other humans? Because what we've seen over and over and over again are people starting businesses with $50 or $100 or $25, right? I interviewed an entrepreneur a few weeks ago. She said, I could have started this business with $5, right? We're looking for needs. We're trying lots of little things. I just push back a little bit against the idea that you need money to be an entrepreneur. You need money once you've proven the idea and you want to grow. But it's really about bootstrapping. It's about starting where you are. I don't believe that money is the obstacle in the initial phrase. Mindset is the obstacle.
Yeah. And go ahead.
If I may add to that, that goes back to the necessity type of entrepreneurship that is practiced in our countries, in our African countries in general. We are not talking of necessity-based type of entrepreneurship. We are talking of the entrepreneurship skills that will make you sustainable. You got to learn the skills. You got to develop the mindset that will enable you to be able to identify an opportunity, a problem to solve to help the humanity. Once that problem, you have identified it and you have structured it, and one find that it is fixable. Now, that's one of the things IEAIS will help you when we have seen that you have proven yourself capable enough to make your idea to be sustainable. Then we will be able to give you a little seed money, to see your idea become successful. The necessity-based type of entrepreneurship, which we do practice there, is today you are giving the money, the next day the business can go or the business can fail. So that is why it is important for you to develop the mindset and be able to acquire the necessary skills to make you a sustainable entrepreneur. There are tons of problems. If we look inwards, let's say, for example, we have the common vegetable we use in Nigeria. Let's say the vegetable which we call water leaf, for example. One person can become an entrepreneur based on water leaf. One person can become an entrepreneur to be able to say, instead of importing pig milk from Europe, can we develop our own pig milk? In this pandemic time, some of our hospitals in Nigeria do not have oxygen. Somebody can say, how can I make oxygen? So that you have to be able to acquire the skills and be able to get entrepreneurship skills in you to be able to say, okay, this is how I'm going to do it, and make sure that I will live with producing oxygen. Then when you get your idea feasible, IEIS will be able to help you to see that successful. At this point, we cannot blame everything on the government. That is what Mr. Gary is trying to tell you, and that is why you have seen so many other people who are homeless, who are today, even some of them from African countries, who are today where they are. We have to identify the opportunity. Let's say, for example, Mr. Dangote, who started from nothing, salt. All of us do not know what salt is. Why do we use salt? The only thing we know about salt is to use it to put in the food we eat, to spice up our food. but salt has a lot of advantages and benefits. It is salt that they use in the breweries. It is salt that they use in the preservatives of the products which are manufactured in Nigeria. It is salt that the cosmetic industries use. So he identified that opportunity in salt and started importing salt into the country. And from salt, he goes into sugar and there to where he is today. There are lots of opportunities to identify. And at this point, I am encouraging all the teachers, all the educators at different levels in Nigeria, all the government establishments, all the corporations. The entrepreneurial mindset is not necessarily for the youth. It is also important for your employee. If your employees in your corporate bodies have the entrepreneurial mindset, they will move and become more innovative and more creative, and at the same time will be able to be sustainable and now live. This pandemic time virus has opened ideas of all countries in the world, that in the history of the world, each country has to shut down their airspace, no fly in, no fly out. Now, we have, at this point, we start depending on other countries to develop the vaccine, which those countries we are developing, depending on, have the entrepreneurial mindset that enable them to be able to be persistent in the midst of difficulties. They were able to go all through length to be able to develop a vaccine in 1 year that all of us are now depending on. Can we use that entrepreneurial mindset and transform it to our youth, to everything we have? That is why this is very important. And this is why any country that strives, we cannot depend only on the developed world, on China. We have the skills, we have the talent, we have the brain, we have the resources. Let us make it happen. Nigeria is the most populous countries in Africa. We have everything it takes. We are here and ready to help you. All you need is to be able to acquire the necessary skills to move us ahead.
So, Ngozi, I want to just kind of add to what you're saying, that you're absolutely right. It's not the lack of resources that's stopping us. People with an entrepreneurial mindset can find opportunities in the most in the most opportunity constrained environments. While people who don't have an entrepreneurial mindset will overlook opportunities even in the most opportunity-rich environments. And what I would say is that Nigeria is indeed an opportunity-rich environment. As I said earlier, the mindset that once enabled us to succeed is now holding us back. It's not that opportunities are hard to find. It's that they're easy to overlook.
Thanks for that, Gary. There is another question we'll get to in a second around some of the concepts. I wanted to address, there's been a number of questions about facilitator training, so I wanted to address that very quickly. Essentially, the way the process is working right now is we have trained Ngozi as a facilitator of the program. So for the student version of the program, if you'd like to take that course, you can go directly to her. She can work that out with you. She's also going to soon be offering the facilitator training, the training that would be similar to what we're going to provide through our services here in the United States. And that facilitator training, to become a facilitator of the program, you can either take that through us here at Eli, or once Ngozi gets her process going and IEEIS is offering that facilitator training, you'll be able to take that through her. We don't have an exact timeline for that yet, but that will be coming this year. Now, I did in the chat go ahead and put, I think Ali was asking about it, and there were some others who were asking about it. I went ahead and put the link to the facilitator trainings that we're offering from here in the United States. So if you'd like to attend one of those, you can go to that link. I just put that out there a minute ago. We have one that starts next week, and then we also have another one that will be coming up in April. But if you'd like to wait and to be able to receive this training from Ngozi, to have that African perspective, specifically a Nigerian perspective, where she'll be able to tie in local entrepreneurs and Nigerian entrepreneurs as part of that training, then I would, recommend that you wait for her to have that available for you. But if you'd like to get it direct from us as it is now, you can check out that website that we sent out and go ahead and get signed up for that. And I did, because you've attended this webinar, we went ahead and put a reduced rate. Our rate is normally $995 US dollars for that training. I went ahead and put a reduced rate of $795 in available. So just if you are signing up and would like to use that discount, just let us know in the comments as you're signing up, and we'll make sure we get that to you. Now, that's going to, the long-term plans that IEEIS has for these ideas to help Nigeria. And we'd like to, through our partnership with Ngozi and her team, to expand this and to help make this broader impact across not just Nigeria, but all of Africa. Okay, so I think I've addressed that question. If there's still confusion around that, please go ahead and put your question out there. I'm trying to see. Oh, okay. Now this question, I'm not sure if it's been addressed fully, mainly because I've been answering another question. But what is the role of an enabling environment to the entrepreneurial mindset? So Gary, really addressing that person versus the situation concept.
Yeah, I mean, the message from the Ice House is as follows. We're saying to the individual, look, you are capable of this. And we're showing you all these examples of other people who have come from similar or worse circumstances, who have followed this path and become successful. They're not all billionaires, but they've climbed out of their circumstances and created more meaning and prosperity in their lives. So we're saying to the individual, you have to realize that you are capable, and you have to find a way. You have to stop blaming your government or your parents or your teachers or your boss from preventing you from doing this. Okay? That's what this book is really all about, right? Find a way to make yourself more useful. Stop blaming other people and find a way. But we're also saying to parents, to teachers, to organizational leaders and community stakeholders, stop blaming your children, your students, your workers for their lack of engagement. And look at the systems that you've created and the extent to which those systems are inhibiting the natural development of entrepreneurial attitudes, behaviors, and skills. So it's really a two-part approach. That's what I said in the beginning. I'm interested in the controllable factors, both within the person, that's the mindset, and the situation, right? How do we create the circumstances within which an individual can thrive?
That's
I
great.
hope that answers that question, Rob. I'm seeing there's another.
I do, yeah. It's specifically about insurance as a tool for sustainability. So what role does insurance play in this?
I don't have an answer to that. We're not really about, our focus is really not about how to run a business. Our focus is on the mindset of entrepreneurs. What are the underlying beliefs, the assumptions, and the mental models that enable them to recognize, evaluate, and bring ideas to life. We generally don't get into the business management particulars. It's so broad and so general. We really try to stay focused on the mindset. With all that said, I very much appreciate your comment, Elo. So thank you.
Great. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. There've been lots of great questions, so it's kept us.
A lot of great questions.
Yes, lots of great questions. Yes, doing business, like Gary said, if you don't have the necessary skills, the business most times fails. But when you have the necessary skills and be able to go through the learning skills and understand what it takes and learn from people who have also gone through the program and acquire the necessary skills that will enable them to persist. We have to be able to let our children, educate them to understand that from day one, they have to be able to develop the mindset to enable them to first to identify this opportunity, which is problem, and be able to see a way to solve it. And once this skills is acquired, it's all spread across all discipline, all knowledge. Even when you face a lot of difficulties in your mathematics class, in your technology class, you have the strength to persist. And it is that lack of not having the persistence, the mind to be able to face the obstacle that makes them to now come back to us and start leaning towards us, leaning towards the government, or blaming this person or blaming that. Every one of us have the skill set that was given to us right from creation to be able to adapt to any environment. And with that said, there is nothing we cannot do to solve some of the problems that we have in our various countries in Africa and in Nigeria. And that will make us become entrepreneurs. We are now very happy going through internet, Facebook, WhatsApp. We use all those. We are now in the technology revolutionized type of century. Somebody made it possible. It wasn't easy. The program we are looking at today, ELI, wasn't easy. It took Mr. Gary lots of decades of years to go through research and to be able to make it useful, and have trained tons and tons and millions and thousands of facilitators all over the world. And we are now looking forward to transform Africa as a whole and transform Nigeria as a whole. We need all of you to be a participant and be able to sign into this program, bring it to your classroom, bring it to your office, bring it to the government bodies, spread the word across. In everything you do, it will be we will be able to achieve the sustainability and be able to solve some of our problems. We do not have to leave the government, blame government in everything. We can do it ourselves. That is why IEEIS is there with the ELI collaboration to be able to make this possible. Let us make a history. Thank you.
Thank you, Ngozi. Thank you, Rob. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope this has been helpful, insightful. Hope you've learned something there about a little bit more about the entrepreneurial mindset and how we can redefine economic development in Nigeria by cultivating entrepreneurial mindsets, as Ngozi said, at home, in school, at work, at all levels of society. So thank you, everyone.
Before you conclude, David, I am also encouraging all the educators, the government education offices, the Ministry of Youth and Development, Ministry of Education to be able to think inwards and work with us. Let us develop a curriculum that will be useful for our students. At the world we are today, the new 21st century, we have to teach our children the practical skills, not only the theoretical skills. Children learn that hydrogen, for example, in chemistry, in science, hydrogen plus oxygen gives them water. They learn that. They also learn that when they break hydrogen and oxygen, they have hydrogen and oxygen separated. Now, they do not know that oxygen is important, that oxygen has a lot of value chain, which we are in need now in Nigeria in our hospitals. They do not know that hydrogen has a lot of other value proposition. I am giving this at a science level example. There are millions of examples in our agricultural industry, in our aviation industry, in all the industries, in our chemical industries. We have oil and gas as our main natural resources. How do we use the other products that comes from oil and gas to transform it to something that will be useful for ourselves? All this is what we have to start from day one to start teaching our children. We have engineers, we have people that are making the fastest chips in the United States of America is a native of Nigeria. We have all other people, researchers that have made it through and have contributed to the United States and other European countries, in Australia, in Asia. All these are from Nigeria. We can make it happen. So I'm calling on all government bodies to join us. Let us make this happen and transform Nigeria. We can do it. Thank you. And at this opportunity, at this time, I am thanking all of you, all the participants that were present in this webinar. It's a great joy to see all of you. And I am proud to bring Mr. Gary and Mr. Rob to Nigeria. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ngozi. Hope to see you all soon.
Thanks very much. Have a good day. I think we've answered questions in the chat. We'll see you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.